Imagine choosing to literally burn alive in a raging fire rather than just, admit you were wrong.
I mean, it sounds completely irrational, right?
That sounds insane. But there's this really fascinating ancient Buddhist philosophy that suggests we basically make a localized version of this exact choice every single day.
Yeah, we do, constantly.
Like we destroy relationships, ruin our own peace of mind, and just generate endless psychological friction simply because we refuse to yield. So today we are doing a deep dive into a 2016 Dharma talk given by a monk at Bogapsa Temple.
Right, and the core theme we're unpacking here is the law of cause and effect.
Overcoming the mind that hates to lose. That's the exact topic.
Exactly, which is traditionally referred to as karma. But what's fascinating here is that we're analyzing it strictly through this psychological lens of that stubbornness, the mind that absolutely hates to lose.
Yeah, and the goal for you listening today is to really see how this ancient framework maps directly onto your modern anxieties. Because yielding, which modern culture almost always equates with weakness, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like surrender.
Right. But this suggests yielding might actually be your ultimate strategic victory. So let's jump in. The monk starts by completely dismantling how we assume cause and effect works.
He does, yeah. It really strips away the mysticism usually associated with karma. We tend to think of karma as this cosmic scoreboard, right? Like the universe is going to punish you later for something you do today.
Right, like Santa's naughty or nice list.
Exactly. But this material frames it as immediate, highly practical human psychology. It asks us to look at the mental friction we manufacture for ourselves in real time.
And he uses this story of a counseling session with a female follower, a basolnim. She had this deeply troubled relationship with her husband. Eventually, they separated, and shortly after, he actually passed away.
Right, so logically, you'd think her primary source of daily conflict is just gone.
You would think. And she's also, a dedicated practitioner at the temple, always doing good deeds. But she tells the monk her life is still just filled with hardship and friction. Like zero peace.
Yeah, because the external variable was removed, but the internal suffering remained completely untouched. The monk points out that her root cause, the psychological seed she keeps planting, is a mind that fundamentally hates to lose.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's a mind completely intolerant of the mistakes or inefficiencies of others, right?
Spot on. And we really need to clarify the scope of what hating to lose means here. It's rarely about, dramatic theatrical arguments.
Or road rage.
Right, not road rage. The friction is generated in microfixations. The text uses an example of something as trivial as a sutra book.
Oh, yeah, the book on the table.
Exactly. You place a book on a table, you want it perfectly aligned at the edge. Someone walks by, nudges it, or moves it. If your mind locks onto that deviation, if you start running this silent, agitated narrative about why they moved it, how they lack respect, how things should be perfectly placed,
You're doing the thing.
You are experiencing the mind that hates to lose.
I mean, a modern equivalent would be like the way your spouse loads the dishwasher. Or a coworker using slightly different formatting on a spreadsheet.
Oh, the dishwasher debate is a classic example.
Oh, wait, isn't there a line between just, having high standards of personal preferences and actually generating negative karma? It feels like we're equating simple organization with suffering.
Well, the preference itself is entirely neutral.
Okay.
The suffering begins in the rigid inability to release that preference when reality doesn't match it. The monk actually uses a really specific phrasing here. He observes that people have spirit, but they lack mind.
Spirit, but no mind.
Right. Think of spirit in this context as mental momentum or forceful intention. It's that raw drive to shape the world to your expectations.
Like pushing forward.
Exactly. But mind refers to spatial awareness, expansiveness, and basically the capacity for acceptance.
Oh, wow. So having spirit without mind is like driving a car with a massive engine but no steering wheel.
That is the perfect analogy.
You have all this aggressive forward momentum pushing for how reality should be, but absolutely no capacity to steer around how reality actually is.
That is the exact mechanism of the suffering. Let's say you're driving home and your preferred route is blocked by construction. The spirit is the sudden spike of anger and the insistence that the road shouldn't be closed.
Right, yelling at the detour sign.
Exactly. But the mind is the spatial awareness required to smoothly merge left and just take the detour without a second thought. When spirit drastically outweighs mind, your energy just hovers aggressively over the closed road.
You just sit in your car fuming.
Yeah. The universe isn't punishing you. You are generating your own localized suffering in real time simply by refusing to yield to the reality of the detour.
So if these microfixations are the root cause, the obvious question is, why don't our positive actions balance the scales? Like, if someone is deeply stubborn but donates to charity, shouldn't that cancel it out?
You'd think so, but the source material really digs into how we use our own righteousness to mask our stubbornness.
Yeah, the story of the 60-year-old woman with the unmarried son. She visits the monk, and she is like a very serious spiritual practitioner, to the point where another monk praised her, and she actually got offended.
Yeah, she felt flattery was a waste of her time.
Right. She wanted her flaws harshly critiqued so she could reach enlightenment.
She viewed herself as operating way above the need for basic validation. But when she finally gets the harsh critique from the monk, he tells her point blank that she lacks true filial piety. She disrespects her family.
And she just immediately gets defensive.
Oh, incredibly hostile. She starts listing her spiritual resume, talking about the vast amounts of money she spent on these massive 49-day memorial services for her ancestors at the famous Tongdosa temple.
She genuinely thought she was doing the ultimate act of devotion.
Right, but the monk hits her with a reality check. He tells her those expensive rituals were entirely for her own comfort.
Wait, really? Just for herself?
Yeah. She was spending a fortune on ceremonies for the dead while actively avoiding the humbling, messy, real-world work of actually visiting her living parents and in-laws.
Oh, wow. So she was bypassing basic human connection to chase spiritual status.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a devastating critique of spiritual materialism. She thought she could outmaneuver karma through these grand, performative donations.
While ignoring the damage she was causing her real family.
Exactly. And the text notes that once she dropped her ego, actually visited her family and engaged with them directly, her prayers were answered. The friction dissolved.
That brings up that wild incense analogy the monk used.
Oh, that's a brilliant image.
Right, people lighting incense in the temple because they want to feel righteous and perform this visible act of devotion, but they are completely oblivious to the fact that the cheap, dense smoke is literally choking the monks trying to meditate in the exact same room.
They want to offer something nice, but they're hurting people doing it.
It's just so resonant with modern performative altruism, like people doing good deeds primarily for social media validation.
Oh, absolutely. They want the photograph proving their virtue.
Exactly. Entirely oblivious to the people they might be inconveniencing or stepping on to curate that perfect image. It's just the ego disguising itself as righteousness.
We convince ourselves we're acting for the benefit of others when really we just want to feel morally superior, which is why the monk issues a very practical warning regarding success.
Right, because when things go well, we take the credit.
We do. When a difficult situation resolves, our instinct is to say, I did that. It was my hard work, my intelligence, my discipline.
But the text says, don't do that.
Right. It advises attributing that success to the Buddha's merit, to the universe, or just serendipity. Because the moment you declare your own brilliance solved the problem, the ego re-engages. The mind that hates to lose is back in the driver's seat.
Okay, so if we can't buy our way out with performative goodness, we actually have to deal with the people causing us stress. And the default strategy for most of us, when dealing with like a toxic boss or an annoying neighbor, is to just hold our breath and endure it.
We grit our teeth and decide not to fight.
Right. But the Dharma talk explicitly identifies this as the worst possible strategy. It calls it sharpening the knife of your mind.
Yeah, that phrasing is so visceral. Sharpening the knife.
You think you're practicing patience, but you're actually just suppressing this growing anger in the dark.
Because the danger of mere endurance is that it has a finite timeline. If your only strategy is to withstand a difficult person, you will inevitably encounter someone who exceeds your capacity to endure.
And the text illustrates this beautifully with the metaphor of the 4 Buddha statues.
Right, representing progressively harder levels of human endurance.
Let's walk through those. It starts with the clay Buddha. This is someone who tries to hold their ground but has relatively soft boundaries.
And the moment the clay Buddha interacts with a personality that flows forcefully, like water, the clay just loses its form and washes away. It fails.
So the natural human adaptation is to harden yourself. You build firmer emotional walls. You become the wooden Buddha. You can withstand the water now.
But then the wooden Buddha encounters someone with a fiery, unpredictable temper, and the rigid wood catches fire and burns to ash. Endurance fails again.
So you adapt again. You decide to become entirely impenetrable. Cold logic, total stoicism. You become the bronze Buddha.
And the bronze Buddha feels invincible, right? Until they are thrown into the furnace of a truly toxic, boundaryless individual with explosive, boundless rage.
The heat of that irrational environment just melts the bronze into a puddle. Logic totally fails against pure chaos.
Which brings us to the final, ultimate form of endurance, the stone Buddha. This is a person who emotionally dissociates.
They turn to stone, feeling nothing, reacting to nothing.
Convinced that because they're a rock, they can't be hurt.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The monk points to these ancient stone statues scattered across the mountainsides in Galungju. They survive the water, the fire, the furnace.
But over 1,000 years of gentle wind and soft rain.
Their faces are eroded completely smooth. The noses and ears are just gone. The environment slowly deletes their identity. It's like keeping 20 heavy apps open in the background of your phone.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You aren't actively looking at them, so you think they aren't affecting you.
Hmm.
But they are silently draining your battery to zero. You're enduring the friction, but you are still fully engaged in it.
And that is the core psychological flaw of endurance. Suppressing the urge to win is not the same thing as letting go of the need to win.
It's still an ego-driven act.
Exactly. It's a silent declaration that you are strong enough to withstand the opposing force. The underlying nature of your mind hasn't actually shifted. The ego has just dug a deeper trench.
Wow. So whether it's financial stress or chronic family conflict, the daily friction of life is the wind and rain. If you only endure, it will erode you. The fundamental approach has to change.
Right. But how do you practically change a trait that is fundamentally wired into the human operating system?
Yeah, the monk jokes about why he doesn't just point out people's specific flaws so they can fix them.
Because logic does not work on the ego. The moment you point out a flaw, the defense mechanisms deploy. I never said that. Or you misunderstood me.
The ego protects its narrative at all costs. Which brings us to the story of the Saraputra snake, which is it's wild. It shows how ancient and impenetrable this defense mechanism is.
It really does. So the story involves the king of Rajagriha, who gets bitten by a highly venomous snake hidden inside a flower at dawn.
Okay.
A healer captures the snake, places it on a wooden board, and gives it a binary choice. Sucks the poison out of the king to save his life, or the healer will throw the snake and the board into a blazing fire.
Literal destruction.
Absolute agonizing destruction. Yet the snake is so possessed by the mind that hates to lose, so unwilling to submit to the healer's command that it chooses to jump into the fire and burn to death rather than yield.
To literally choose to burn alive rather than admit a mistake, that is terrifyingly relatable.
It is.
The monk points out that even divine intervention or the threat of literal death cannot force an ego to yield if it is determined to hold its ground. We see this in modern divorce courts and boardrooms every day.
Oh, constantly. People will intentionally torch their own careers, bankrupt their companies, or destroy their families just to ensure the other side doesn't get a perceived victory.
So if logic bounces off the ego and endurance just erodes us, what is the actual mechanism for disarming this stubbornness? Is just sitting quietly really enough?
This raises an important question, right? And the solution provided in the text is Seon meditation, known more commonly in the West as Zen meditation, just sitting in a room for an hour.
That sounds too simple.
It does, but we have to look at the mechanics of how karma is generated. The philosophy views thinking not as a passive state, but as an action. Mental fixation is an action. Developing a counter-argument in the shower, that is an action.
And the monk uses the snowball analogy here.
Yes. If you roll a snowball, meaning if you interact with the thought, if you dwell on the anger regarding the detour sign or the moved sutra book, the snowball gathers mass.
It accumulates more snow until it becomes a massive mountain of karma that blocks your path.
Exactly. Even if you fight the thought, you are still interacting with it. You are still rolling the snowball.
Wow. So to dismantle the ego, you have to starve it of a narrative.
Right. By engaging in San meditation, you are practicing the physical act of doing absolutely nothing. You aren't fighting the anger. You aren't enduring it like the stone Buddha. You are simply dropping the snowball and letting it sit in the sun.
Because without the continuous momentum of your attention, the thought naturally melts.
It melts. And the text makes a critical point. Dropping the mind triggers profound physiological benefits.
Yeah, when you stop rolling the snowball, you signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed. The monk mentions that sitting quietly soothes anger, relieves back pain, and gets the saliva flowing.
Which perfectly aligns with modern neurology.
Right. When you stop fighting reality, You shut down the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response. The saliva flowing is a direct biological indicator that the rest and digest state has successfully taken over. Your body registers that the internal war is over.
But there's a really vital caveat here. The monk warns about what happens when people successfully do this, find their lives suddenly free of friction, and then just abandon the practice entirely.
Right, they stop going to the temple?
They stop meditating, they stop examining their ego, and because their life is still going well, they conclude that the temple or the meditation was useless all along.
They view their current peace as proof of their own brilliance.
The ego takes the credit again. But the text frames this as simply spending down a savings account. The sudden ease in their life is just the payout of the good karma they accumulated while doing the work.
Ah, they feel rich, so they stop making deposits.
Exactly. They let the ego back into the driver's seat. And the moment that saved-up patience runs out, the friction returns, often resulting in sudden disaster. The internal work of melting the snowball isn't a one-time fix.
It's a continuous maintenance of the mind.
It requires a complete paradigm shift in how we interpret daily annoyances. Every dropped call, every passive-aggressive email, every traffic jam, none of these are localized tragedies requiring a defensive response anymore.
They're just opportunities.
Exactly. Opportunities to observe the snowball, recognize the urge to roll it, and actively choose to let it melt instead. Because true peace is never achieved by successfully conquering the environment around you. It's achieved by disarming the combatant within you.
That is just a remarkable framework for navigating the week ahead. So we've tracked the evolution of our daily suffering, starting from the microaggressions of misplaced objects, identifying how our raw spirit constantly outpaces our mind.
We examine how our selfless acts are frequently just performative, choking others with the smoke of our righteousness.
Right, and we learned that the Stoic ideal of the stone Buddha is a trap that merely slows down our eventual erosion. And we confronted the terrifying reality that, left unchecked, our ego would rather burn our lives to the ground than admit a minor defeat, just like the snake.
It's heavy stuff, but so practical.
It really is. The ultimate solution isn't fighting harder or building better armor. It's recognizing that the game itself is rigged by our own stubbornness. So think about a conflict you are currently navigating right now, maybe an argument where you have meticulously documented exactly why you are right and they are wrong. Are you actually fighting to improve the reality of the situation? Or are you just fighting your own absolute refusal to yield?
That's the real question.
The next time you feel the heat of that fire and that familiar urge to sharpen the knife, consider what would happen if you simply put down the rope. You might discover that the only way to truly win is to stop playing the game. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.